Okay, thank you very much for joining us on this presentation today. So this presentation is based on an upcoming book chapter by my colleague, Dr. Lachlan Urquhart from the University of Edinburgh and myself. And this is still a work in progress and it's not available online yet. But if you're interested in having a look, please feel free to send us an email and we'll be happy to share a current. So many of us might be aware that under the EU's General Data Protection Regulation, or the GDPR, people do have a wide range of rights in relation to the use of their personal data. But what if one day we receive, let's say, a data protection request from our family members or a housemate or a guest just because we're using some smart home devices and those devices have happened to capture their personal data. So this is really the starting point of our paper, and we were very interested to understand how data protection law might intervene in a smart home life and what sort of duties people might have under the data protection legal framework. This is quite interesting. So earlier last year, the senior vice president of Google was asked whether he would warn his guests about the use of smart speakers in his home before their entry. And he replied like, yes, I would. And I'm not sure if he was making this up on the spot, but we can clearly see there's some sort of expectation in terms of how users of smart technologies might have a role in making sure people's privacy is protected. And this is all becoming very real when we are seeing further developments. So earlier in May, a Dutch court actually ordered a grandmother to delete the photos of her grandchildren age. Of course, this is taking place in more of a social media context rather than an IoT one, but there is no reason why we won't see something similar happening in a smart home scenario in the near future. And that's exactly why we think it would be helpful to start our investigation with a legal concept of accountability, but you will see we're not stopping there. So if we look at Article 5 of the GDPR, you will see there is a legal concept of accountability, or a concept of accountability from a data protection perspective anyway. So the first half of this article has laid down 6 major principles in relation to the use of personal data. But then on top of those 6 principles, there is also a separate principle of accountability that requires the data controller to be responsible for and be able to demonstrate the compliance with all these principles. So 2 questions here. So the first question is, in a smart home context, who is the controller, or who are the controllers? And the second question is, how do they demonstrate such compliance with smart home devices? So in this 2019 paper by Lachlan and his colleagues, there is this very helpful summary of the accountability requirements under the GDPR in a general IoT context. As you can see, these requirements are grouped in 7 main categories. But when we start to apply these general requirements to a more specific context of a smart home, we start to see some challenges. So the first challenge is, who should be held accountable when it comes to using smart home devices? Or in other words, who should be the data controllers? So in this forthcoming paper, we've conducted some very detailed legal analysis of what it means to be a data controller and who should be the data controller in smart homes in legal terms. I'm not going to go into the legal technical details here, but two very interesting trends we've identified in recent case law. So on the one hand, we're seeing the notion of joint controllers is expanding in court decision, which means individuals are more likely to be held jointly liable with the commercial entities who are developing or selling smart products. And on the other hand, it's harder for them to invoke the household exemption because this concept has been very narrowly interpreted by the court. So the implications for smart home users could be quite profound here because they might be held as domestic controllers, so they would have a wide range of data protection responsibilities, but it's not clear how these responsibilities should be shared or split between these domestic data controllers and the commercial data controllers. And the second challenge is when we are trying to apply the same set of rules to these domestic data controllers as we would to commercial organizations, we will immediately see this is probably unfair or impractical because these end users do not possess the same level of resources or skills required. If we look into the empirical literature, of course, we will see a whole range of technical tools available to these end users for them to manage the data protection and cybersecurity risks. But using these tools would have very significant implications for their external or internal interpersonal relationships, and also the usability of these tools, as we can see in the literature, would have a great impact on whether and how they would make use of these tools. And these constraints would in turn shape up our understanding of accountability, not just as a social technical concept, but also a legal one. So to inform both policy making and enforcement of data protection law in relation to the principle of accountability, we think there is still a lot of work that needs to be done to understand this very, very complex situation here in smart homes. And this is very much what we would like to cover in our paper. And again, thank you very much for joining us. You can follow us on Twitter or send us an email if you would like to learn more about our paper. So thank you very much.